And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on 7 multiple platforms, social network platforms. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Got 4 teams to cover, and so let's get to them, shall we? First off, the Pistons hire former Houston Rockets head coach Stephen Silas as assistant coach alongside new head coach Monty Williams. And I just lost Ed Smith a bit ago. Just 1 second here. We apologize. Want to let you know, follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on notifications on the bell icon. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. And subscribe on YouTube at DT2Phillips. Also on Twitch at DT2Phillips1984, and Ed Smith on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at EdSmith313. So, the Pistons have hired former Houston Rockets head coach Stephen Silas as assistant coach alongside new head coach Monty Williams. So, the Pistons are reshaping their coaching staff, aren't they?
They quite are. It's good to see. First and foremost, a little bit of back info on Stephen Silas, if I may inform the viewers and everyone else. Silas did recently come from a 3-year stint as the head coach of the Houston Rockets. Before that, he had spent several years as an assistant coach as well as a scout, starting from dealing with various organizations, whether it be Cleveland or Charlotte. Eventually working with the Warriors from 2006 to 2010. That included some of the early years with Steph Curry. And, if you read certain quotes or certain stories or interviews from Curry himself mentioned specifically, he does mention, or at least gives credit to Stephen Silas in terms of his development style around of developing game plans, and especially around the perimeter and involving shooting with regards to the offense. That was, some would say, the nucleus of the culture that Golden State would eventually blossom into. So when you factor that in, it's not really a surprise to see that he is being brought on as an assistant coach, not just to be one of the assistants under Monty Williams, but also mainly to help run the offense. That is obviously the main concern. And I think as well, there's a couple other things that Monty, or reasons that Monty Williams might have wanted to see Stephen Silas on his staff. Probably goes down to the fact that he does have respect for him as a person. He probably felt it wasn't the best situation for him to be over there at Houston. And again, as we go over this, he was let go by the Rockets, but again, it was just an abysmal tenure situation for everyone all around. So I think Williams thought that Silas might have deserved another chance to continue his work somewhere else, and I think he's given them another opportunity and another chance here in Detroit, but also for the fact that they do share some common ground. I think in terms of grief. Stephen Silas is the son of the former player and former coach Paul Silas, and Silas had passed away in December of last year, I believe. And there was a little bit of a viral moment that if you see on Twitter, it's still up there. After a game, which was sometime after Paul Silas had passed, Monty Williams gave an embrace of encouragement to Stephen Silas, basically let him know and essentially praying for him right then and there at that moment. I think Monty might have sympathized with that moment because he himself lost a loved one a few years prior with his wife passing away. So that is probably a brief snapshot of an insight into who Monty Williams is. One reason among many why he wanted Stephen Silas on his staff. And it's not the only member We'll get into that if you have any info on that. If not, I can get into it shortly of what else that the Pistons are doing with their coaching staff.
Well, there's actually no other info on the Pistons coaching staff at
Well,
this.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing you didn't have any because I happen to have. I was able to do some snooping around and found a little bit of tidbits and updates. Mainly, this was courtesy of Jake Fisher. I hope I'm getting his name right from Yahoo Sports. He did mention in a report of what's going to happen next with regards to the future of the Phoenix Suns, concerning the fact that they did fire Monty Williams and they did just waive Chris Paul. So one of the things that I did find out is
Seems like the Suns are breaking up some portions of their team, if not entirely.
Don't be surprised if Kevin Durant isn't next. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of this Fisher report, he did mention that some of Williams' staff that worked with him on Phoenix, namely Mark Bryan and Jarrett Jack, who I've been also having to read a line about Jack being integral to the development and the development and culture around some of the players. So apparently, those are two members that will be joining Williams' staff in Detroit. And I think that could be potential underrated hires to look at in terms of watching development and progression from our players both on and off the court. And also, one big thing that I think will be crucial to look at as well, Dan Burke. Now, people may not know or even figure out who Dan Burke is or was, but Dan Burke will be apparently, I believe this was the same Fisher report as well, that Dan Burke will be leaving the staff of the Philadelphia 76ers since he was there since 2020. He worked under Doc Rivers recently. Apparently, it's being reported that he will be heading over to this staff in Detroit to work with Monty Williams and run the defense. So if this is to be true,
cool.
Again, it's only reported out there. It's nothing's confirmed or stated by the team or anyone with sources close to the team or anything like that. But assuming this is true, you are getting, in my view, a coach that's going to look to help develop and help change things around the perimeter and with our guards that will lead to a more better and productive offense for Detroit. And of course, in today's day and league and age, you got to score points to keep up. But you also still got to learn basic fundamentals and knowing defense. Defense can still win you games and still win you championships.
Yes.
And I think with this hire of Dan Burke, reported hire, not confirmed, but if it is official, you are getting someone that has worked with only 3 teams since 1989. But it's a good reason why he's worked with only those teams. He worked with the Blazers during their time in the 90s when they were a perennial playoff contender. They had Clyde Drexler, had Terry Porter, made the finals twice. And then in 97, he goes to the Indiana Pacers. And from that point on, he gives the Pacers some of their best years in recent franchise history, whether it have been the tail end of the Reggie Miller years or the years with Paul George or somewhere in between. But they were still constant playoff contenders almost year in and year out, especially that stretch when Burke was brought on to begin with. Remember, that Pacers team in 97 and in 98 especially almost ended the Bulls dynasty. They took the Bulls to Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals in 98, damn near beat them. Then 99, went back to the conference finals, lost to the Knicks. 2000, finally made the finals. And then you see see the reemergence with their playoff rivalry with the Pistons a couple years after that. And then they laid dormant, and then they reemerged again with the Paul George, Roy Hibbert years. Making it back to deep playoff runs, only to deal with the Miami Heat. So it shows you the resume speaks for itself in terms of what Dan Burke can provide as a defensive assistant. I think bringing that level of expertise, and that's another thing, a lot of experience in terms of this combined coaching staff. I think it should pay dividends into what we want to see in terms of improvement and development and progression from this young Pistons team.
Yeah, and we're going to stay on top of this Dan Burke report, whether it's confirmed or not. And that's what we do here. Part of what we do here at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. To those that are new to viewing this, thanks to our new viewers for watching. Next up, Michigan Wolverines football running back Donovan Edwards says he played through a partially torn patella through all of November 2022. And Ed, you described it to me as to how he injured it.
Well, if need be,
in our messenger chat.
Yes. After doing some research and watching how he described the play himself, slight correction I think we should make to that graphic. It wasn't through November 2022. You could pretty much say it was the entire season. Because
the entire season, okay.
Yes, because the moment that Edwards mentioned happened in week 2 against Hawaii. So that's damn near at the start of the season. And the play that it happened on, I was able to see it first as a quick search on YouTube, and then based on a report I was watching on Channel 7 with Edwards describing how it happened. J.J. McCarthy throws basically a high back shoulder pass towards the corner of the goal line, where only Edwards can get it. Edwards turns around, leaps up, makes the catch, but as he's coming down to brace himself, to hit the ground, he plants his right leg. But when he plants his right leg, you do see a little bit of a motion where it jerks or tweaks slightly, a little bit to a certain angle, but it's nothing too severe. And at that moment, Edwards mentioned about, of how putting his foot down, he felt something tweak. It turned out to be a tear of his patella tendon. In fact, let me make sure I got this completely correct.
Yeah, it's a partially torn patella tendon, yes.
Yeah, but I've got to make sure it's the correct terminology because in terms of how they say it and how they spell it, it can confuse some certain people. So the patellar tendon, it's actually, is it in the kneecap?
Patellar.
Yeah.
Oh, it's patella. Patella, yep.
Yeah, and the patella was under the kneecap, if I read that correctly. So that was the injury that Edwards sustained. It was not in the kneecap itself, but it was below the kneecap. So the thing is, he wasn't gonna exacerbate that injury anymore, thankfully, because he was able to share the bulk of the carries with Blake Corum. So once you saw Blake Corum having the season he was having, that took the pressure off of trying to feed all the workloads. That took off some of the workload off of Donovan Edwards until we saw Blake Corum go down and Edwards himself had to step up. Now, mind you, going to that Ohio State game, now that he's also dealing with this knee injury, he's also dealing with a hand injury. As we saw with it being pointed out, he had the cast in his hand. And yet, through all that, he still went off and broke his foot off in Ohio State's ass. So
yeah, not once but twice, 75 and 85 yards in Columbus.
In the words of Shannon Sharp, he put foots in him. So knowing all that and seeing how it went down makes me enjoy that Columbus win even more. And also gives me an expectation and also has me giddy with anticipation as to what a fully healthy 100% Donovan Edwards can bring this year with a fully healthy 100% Blake Corum. This is not just a chance for redemption or unfinished business to win the national championship, in the words, or at least in terms of Blake Corum's mind of view, but for Donovan Edwards, this is most certainly an audition to NFL scouts. Say, hey, wait till you see me in my final form. And that you'll know I will be one of, if not the biggest steals or biggest pickups you can get in the 2024 draft. So knowing that has me excited in terms of what this Michigan offense can bring potentially to the table next year.
Can't wait. Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are both rehabbing as we speak. I just can't wait.
Both should be ready to go by the start of the year, though.
They both should, indeed. Tigers, man, they're coming back down to earth, losing 9 straight, falling to 26 and 37. Fourth place in the American League Comedy Central now, still 5.5 games back of the Minnesota Tees, not Twins. Third worst but the Tigers have the third worst record in the entire American League, sixth worst record in all of Major League Baseball, and as you pointed out on your Twitter handle, with the video of that blown save by Jason Foley, you can confirm that their season is already done early in June.
It confirmed to me essentially in terms of, you want to say, if you can pinpoint What was the moment where you thought, okay, this is a done deal, this season's cooked? I was trying to hold hope when we saw the injury line start to pile up. First it was, we see Eduardo Rodriguez, then we see Vierling, then we see Carpenter, then we see, Fado go down, then Riley Green goes down. Well, now you can add Akil Baddoo to the IL conga line. Yep. So he went down. So he's going to be out for 10 days. So Mickey's already a corpse. He's going to go through. He's getting a spare world tour. That's nice, but he just brings nothing to the team, unfortunately. And now on top of that,
not much, if anything.
Now on top of that,
he doubled twice in one game.
Yeah, but that good luck. That's probably going to be the last double you're going to see for his career. How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then now we had this situation where your bullpen has
spiraled out of control.
It has, because you had Arizona dead to rights. You had a 2-run lead in the ninth. Okay, you gave up a run, but you had them down to their last strike, and then you fumble the bag and don't get it done, and then you lose again. So now, like you mentioned, Taylor, that's 9 straight games lost. That now, by the way, makes 3 straight sweeps. White Sox, Phillies, now to Arizona.
Wow.
And so, yeah, you're 5.5 back. You're now in 4th place in the AL Comedy Central. We're nowhere near July yet. And I'm thinking, okay, at least we had a good May and somewhat April, but it assures me that, yeah, this season's done. And in my opinion, you have got to start looking towards, okay, we need to be sellers. You've got to be sellers near the trade deadline, because the way this roster is currently constructed, yeah, we'll get a couple of months out of the year what we saw in April or May. I'm like, hey, this team they're overperforming. Yeah, we're seeing why, because when it's back to reality now, whoop, there goes rabbit.
Trying to do too much, yeah.
Yeah, so now it comes down to get as much as you can get back with what you're selling at the deadline. Hope AJ Hinch doesn't up and leave you at the end of the year, and
AJ Hinch has made some dumb decisions,
but also I understand, but he's the best shot you got right now in terms of making progress. Name me what other manager you're going to go get to possibly replace him. No manager is perfect, but I think he's doing the best of what he can at the roster that he currently has at his disposal, which is an indicator to me that hopefully Scott Harris has some damn leeway to where, he's going to be able to go and try and get some players for this roster. Because I just saw in recent
Scott Harris brought Matt Boyd back for 1 year worth $10 million. And Matt Boyd is still pitching terrible for the Tigers. He's better off in Seattle.
I'm not touting that as a good example.
Matt Boyd is a meaningless waste of time for Tigers fans. Yes, he's a nice guy. Nice guys finish last, period.
Exactly. But guess what? You need a better market. You need a better market in that. So, unfortunately, he was the best that they could provide at that time. Detroit, unfortunately, is not an attractive option. I think it's easy to say why, but it's not an attractive option right now. So you take the best what you can get, but you still try to find minor improvements, whether it be through draft, whether it be your prospects, or, like I said, making deals at the deadline to make because that's where it is. You got to take the steps wherever you can get at this point and try to convince your owner, hey, this is what I'm working with. You got to give me some more to deal with here.
Yeah, and the Diamondbacks, by the way, they're 40-25 now after their win today in Detroit. But the Tigers still had them. The Tigers still had their finale salvaged against the Diamondbacks. They, like you said, they blew it. But yeah, the first 2 games, yeah, they were done and over with from the get-go anyway. But the third, still he could have had them. But then again, the Tigers are the Tigers.
It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to make a difference. We know this team wasn't going anywhere this season anyway. But still, it was nice getting that reprieve from last month that we saw. Okay, it is enjoyable to see some baseball games every once in a while at downtown again. But yeah, reality has stricken home hard here.
Yeah, and I kept thinking game by game through today that the Tigers weren't even ready to contend for a division. I know the Tigers were lucky enough to reach it as high as second place, but still, I felt I had a bad feeling that they were really just not ready to contend yet with the lack of offense and the lack of defense, mind you. They have some good pitching at least, but
And
honestly, that's not enough.
granted, the injuries are one thing, but I can't use that as a crutch. You know what I mean?
No way.
So this roster is
Me
mid
neither,
at best.
especially.
Is mid at best with with everyone healthy, and that just goes without saying.
Mid at best with everyone healthy is right. So that so there you go. So we'll we'll still keep we'll still keep tabs on the Tigers record that and just how they're doing each
Listen,
weekend
man, if it
anyway.
wasn't for the fact that we got to do these recaps week in and week out, I would not care about watching this team this year because I know what they've been. Yeah, you want to see some little improvement, but you got to look at what the expectations are, and know that hey, until they do something drastic, this is what I'm going to get every year, and I'm not going to invest my time. The only reason I am is because I got it covered for this show. So
Exactly. And they don't. Sometimes they don't even care to do anything drastic because of their cheapskate owner, parking lot king Chris Ilitch.
mhm,
So
fish
for
rots
that,
from the top.
yep. That being said, forget the games ahead. Let's move on to the Lions. Well, we have a Megatron update. Calvin Johnson, earlier than last week, he says he wants to help and mentor last year's rookie wide receiver Jameson Williams, who was recently suspended 6 games for online gambling. But yeah, Jameson Williams, I get. He says he wasn't aware, but that's where Calvin Johnson wants to help and mentor the guy. It's pretty
Yeah,
simple. Not much else
it
to say.
is. It goes without saying. He did. I mentioned this before when he was spotted at OTAs. I was thinking to myself, and I didn't remember this around the time where he had that interview with Ryan Armani, where he also had mentioned about in dropping hints about wanting to work with JMO. And I mentioned before of how this was basically this olive branch being extended by Megatron here, and it reminds me in a way, and this was confirmed with them telling 97.1 that he connected with him the other day or so at minicamp. So what it tells me that Calvin he sees the potential, but he also wants to make sure that Jameson is being able to handle his business the right way off the field as well as on the field, because what we see right now in the NBA with certain players that don't have their shit right, you don't want to see that crossing over into your world, into your territory. So knowing, for example, I've seen examples of this before. Chris Carter being a mentor to a young Randy Moss when he was up and coming at the time, being that mentor to Larry Fitzgerald. Um,
Back in the
you've seen
'90s, Randy Moss and Chris Carter. Yeah,
Yeah, and Larry Fitzgerald when he was a young ball boy for the Vikings around that time before, and then of course he went to college, became a star at Pitt, and became one of the best wide receivers in NFL history. It all started with his days being that mentoree under the eyes of Chris Carter. So I'm saying that is a potential you could see to want to happen here with Calvin and Jameson. Now it's not just Calvin working with JMO in general. I believe Dan Campbell mentioned it is a part of what I feel is going to be a fledgling, but slowly growing development department. So where you have coaches or advisors or someone that works with or keeps in touch with players as they're whether it be rookies or second year players or third year players as they're making that transition from college to the pros. So I think that is crucial and essential to their development and in the maturation process and how they handle adverse situations and what to deal with all those potential repercussions. So having that type of department involved in your building, I think, is very important in terms of being a culture builder and also establishing that hey, we don't want to let what happened earlier that led to those suspensions. We can't let that shit fester. So let's try to nip that in the bud now while we can.
yeah. So yeah, just 2 more months until the Lions preseason kicks off.
Mm.
So let's get to our what we've learned segment in terms of what we talked about tonight. By the way, Javier Baez, in terms of the
Oh
Tigers
yeah,
selling, he has a no
he's the
trade clause.
shits.
He
But even
he has a
though,
no he has a no trade clause through 2027 before he becomes a free agent. I learned that from Spot Track
oh
on the
god,
spot.
yeah.
So the
Thanks,
only
Alavila.
way,
Thanks,
so
Alavila.
yep. So the only way to get rid of him earlier than that is to release him
Buy him
and
out or
eat
give
his
me a
money and
vam.
consider it dead money.
Yeah, that because
That'd be a tough
I can't
decision too.
see. Well, guess what? It's either this or we put up with 4 more years of what we've been dealing with the last 10 for Cabrera.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry, not gonna deal with that crap again.
No,
Buy
me
him
neither.
out, eat the money, do whatever. Get his ass out of town.
After this year or earlier, or even
Whatever.
early,
I wish
or
you could
even
do it
before the
now.
season ends. Yeah,
I wish you could
now,
do it
yes,
now.
yes. A lot of Tiger fans want to see Baez gone
Good
from
God.
this product on the field. Everyone knows that, and we feel their pain, and we feel the same pain, and
Right. That's
and
what helped me learn today that, yep, it confirmed it. This is what I learned. The Tigers season is officially over. And I also learned that, thankfully, there is more smoke to this fire of Calvin Johnson mending his relationship with the Lions, because through this olive branch of working with JMO, it could lead to more progress and more necessary mending between the two sides after what went down after he retired. So between Megatron wanting to build bridges and restore some bridges possibly, and the Tigers realizing that, they've fallen back to earth now. That's what we learned for today.
yeah. Also, what I've learned, the Pistons are taking it not one but two steps back upward with their not only with their new head coach Monty Williams, but with a new assistant coach Stephen Silas, and Dan Burke will keep our eyes on.
From what I
So
learned from what if you want to say, you can say what you learned from that situation. They're at least recognizing that, hey, in terms of what we need to do in this town, we know we're not going to catch the Lions in terms of popularity, but pay attention to what the moves they've done. We got to do something about our culture, which starts with our coaching, but also other variables around that. Know how we handle and treat our players, and then let the rest develop from there. So I think they've done well so far with who they've hired on their coach and their coaching staff. I like the fact that that Dwayne Casey is going to be working in the front office with John Beeline. I like that aspect at least. And if Troy Wheeler can find the right draft picks, if he somehow salvages this bad situation of not getting what you wanted from the draft lottery and ends up with a good haul, hey, let's see what you can do for next year.
yep. Well, it may take some time or not. Who knows? So these are all the things that we've learned, and hopefully Michigan, with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum rehabbing, can win a national championship in addition to yet another Big Ten
Well, I
championship
saw.
and another victory against Ohio State at the Big House this season.
Well, it's simple. I did a quote tweet of one of the players, one of the offensive linemen. He basically stated it. This is like a bullet point 3-step process, but to me, I consider it as all part of one goal: beat the state teams, which is OSU and MSU, win the Big Ten,
and PSU. Yep.
Yeah, I
Big
get
Ten.
it. Yeah, I get it. But the major emphasis and the focus is on Michigan State and Ohio State. But I get you on Penn State as well. So beat the state teams, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. Steps 1 and 2, you have proven you can do, and frankly, you can do easily. It is now time to prove that you can do step 3. We've seen you 2 years in a row now to where you've gotten to the dance, you've gotten to the ball.
Here's a step in between. Win a national college football playoff semifinal game, for goodness sake.
Well, you can't get to
failed to do it against a really good Georgia team, and failed again against TCU.
Well, Taylor, it kind of speaks for itself. They know that. That's why they got to get to the national championship game to win the national championship.
Exactly. Yes. So I'm just dividing it into sub steps. But yes, same
in terms
thing.
of Yeah, but to keep it simple, they kind of basically they understand. They know they can't stop at just winning the Big Ten. They got to get to and win the national championship.
Yep, got to get to it by at least winning a college football playoff game. In other words,
For sure.
so these are all the things that we've learned that we've discussed tonight, and that is another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on multiple streaming platforms. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and turn on notifications on the bell icon. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at DT2Phillips. And on Twitch, DT2Phillips1984. And follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch at EdSmith313. Shoutouts go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, Baldwin Family Healthcare of Cadillac, Cadillac Nutrition, Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and t-shirt. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City, the Edo Ramen House in Royal Oak, rated Detroit's best Japanese restaurant for consecutive years, 248-556-5775, or visit EdoRamenHouse.com. Also follow them on Instagram at Edo Ramen House. Delicious sushi and Filipino food. The all-new Kalkaska Battlers of the Michigan Independent Hockey League. Let's roll with it. Rolled ice cream in Cadillac, now branded with the Food Mafia, and Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8195, and on Facebook. The Misaki Golf Club in Lake City, the Red Ox Tavern in Auburn Hills, United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan, and Yen Yoga and Fitness in Traverse City. We'll be back next week, Sunday night at 9:30-ish on all these multiple platforms. Until then, as always, we observe Michigan sports and we detect the truth. Stay aware, everybody. Stay smart.
And stay safe.